Hi everyone, it's a pleasure to be here today as part of ACCA's summer school program, and I just want to thank you all for your time and attention today. As a guest on this soil, I acknowledge the original custodians of this land, the Wurundjeri Wurrung people, as well as the Bunurong, Bunurong and the broader Kulin Nation. My name's Keemon Williams. I'm a Koa, Googie Allenji, Miriam and South Sea Islander, artist and curator. And today I'm here to talk to you about an upcoming work of mine, Project Ragdoll. Working title, it's kind of an interesting chance for me to step outside of my usual practice and explore potential digital collaborative ways of working. So Project Ragdoll is conceived as a long-term initiative between myself as an artist and the Australian public. So I seek, with your help and the help of other Australians, to co-commission a new mascot where their appearance, values, and identity is shaped by your thoughts and your feelings. So I start with feelings because, for me, they're a reminder that despite the ongoing conflicts around our country, amongst the grief and perpetual sorry business that we as many peoples who live here are going through daily, feelings are one of the facts of life that truly unite us. As you can see here is an example of some previous work. The ongoing thematic of a lot of my work grapples with this idea that national icons inherently fail us as people, and they fail to truly stand for something. Personally, unfortunately for me, I fail to engage with my Australian identity because I simply don't see it as being able to facilitate the complexity or the sympathies to fully capture all of the different persons that I am. As a queer First Nations person, oftentimes to call yourself Australian is to sacrifice a part of yourself to join a greater whole. And so, as you can see, I really like to bully or maybe sadistically assault these national icons because to me that's a way to create this sort of proxy body to ragdoll or throw around as kind of maybe a twisted retribution for some of the things that I and many others have gone through. But I believe in my heart of hearts that I'm an optimist and that as Australians, we also have a responsibility to broaden the definition of what that means for us. And that brings me to Project Ragdoll and this presentation today, exploring mascots as a form of collective identity. So mascots are these powerful beings that can effortlessly weave through many cultural spaces, whether that be national, popular culture, internet, social media. They allow a certain neutrality that a human body cannot. Once you don a costume, you kind of forego your default identities, and it allows you this ability to speak from a universal place or be universally ridiculed, which I also think is a great opportunity for connection. They're a powerful representation of an idea, first and foremost. They seek to represent typically a brand, a team, some sort of organization. And they have a capacity to bring people together based on a shared common interest. So a good mascot is one that a viewer can ultimately see themselves in. After all, product marketing isn't so much about what the product we're selling is, it's what kind of identity are we selling. So in Australia, one of the predominant forms that we have of mascot culture is sporting mascots. So like these AFL mascots here, they provide a sense of kinship with a broader community. And I'm wondering with this project, is it possible to create an icon that represents not necessarily the broader idea of being Australian, but if it's possible to simulate a false version of that, to create something that is subcultural, countercultural, that fills in the gaps where corporate mandated mascots perhaps don't. Originally, mascots were devised as, good luck charms, as these sort of shamanistic devices to bring both optimism but then good fortune to various communities. I like to think of mascots as a reflection of our human desire to take all of these complex feelings and emotions we have and just put them into the form of a little dude. I think that to me is one of the triumphs of the human experience. But ultimately, I think mascots are a replication of our shared history and lineages. So I often think of heraldry, so the art of creating designs for armor and weaponry that is viewed through many places in Europe and globally, which grew into your coat of arms to represent nations and states and territories on behalf of the crown and governments. But mascots also help to distinguish creed, households, bloodlines in a way not related to conquest. So perhaps most relatably and relevantly to this country, I like to think that a form of mascots is a long-standing tradition of indigenous totemic relations between animals, plants, and objects. And I think that is evidence as well of this deep time relationship between wanting to augment the self and connect with the world around us through something that is not human. So I thought it'd be good to go through some case studies. So these are examples of mascots that I think really engage with the public's relationship between the private and the public self and create an interesting dynamic between what we expect when we engage with these funny little guys and our broader cultural standards. So the first one is one of my favorites, Gritty, which is the mascot for the Philadelphia Flyers, the hockey team. And he falls into this weird sort of interesting middle ground of design philosophy. He embodies everything that you shouldn't do. He's ugly, he's imposing, and he kind of looks like a hellish Muppet. And I think because of that, he sits in this uncanny valley where he's ugly, cute, and in a way that's actually perfect for what a mascot should be. A mascot shouldn't be intimidating. It's something that everybody should relate to, and the more approachable, the less threatening a mascot is, the more it's able to represent a larger body of people. So there's this interesting sort of reversal effect where he's so unheroic that he becomes the people's champion. So as you can see, he's a bit of a diva, he's an ally, he's a model, and he's also appeared in various TV shows. I think he was in Abbott Elementary at one point. So yeah, that's an example of a corporate mascot that has kind of transcended its first use case as a representative of a team and become its own viral phenomena. And the second example, a bit more poignantly perhaps, is a mascot that I think represents the potential of what character creation can mean with a higher social purpose. So Handala was this child mascot character created by Palestinian writer, activist, artist Naji al-Ali, that is basically a symbol of Palestinian resistance and a reflection of his own experience. So Handala is 10 years old, and he is 10 years old because that's when Naji was forced out of his home in 1948 during the Nakba. And as part of that, his law is in itself a political act. So he never grows up because he cannot return home. And when he finally does have a chance to return and reclaim his homeland, then he will be able to grow up. And he famously turns his back because that's a symbol of the world turning its back on Palestine. And an interesting example of a mascot having a life after the author. So many artists in sites of conflict and war have appropriated his image and perpetuated it onto these sites in their own way to continue this solidarity. And I think that's a really important reflection on perhaps why we should be making our own mascots, is that if we just listen to corporations, if we just listen to the ones that we're given, ultimately it doesn't reflect the nuances of our everyday. So that brings me to the digital part of the presentation. So as part of this ongoing project, and please feel free to scan this. I'll give you a moment to go through. And this will be updated later today to have some additional feedback points. So I'm going to try and speed through the rest of this presentation so that hopefully we can have some time for questions and an open discussion. But essentially, perhaps also in the wake of this terrifying state that we're in with our digital technology moving so fast, I really wanted to engage with the digital platform in a way that was a bit more human. So I'm kind of proposing that this is, I guess, a spiritual census. So this will be released to the entirety of our country to then get responses based on how people are feeling, identify trends, and then allow that to directly inform the project. So maybe reheating a bit of a Baldessari nachos there, but I think this like long-term collaborative project is where I'm interested in taking the practice next. So I'm going to go through just a few of the questions as part of the survey and sort of give you my responses. And as an example, then I'll give you an outline of the longer term and then open up to some questions. So the first one is, how do you feel about being Australian? Well, it doesn't make me feel great. I think there is this perception that it's supposed to be something that represents us all and that it is almost a shield, but it's a shield that has many gaps, and unfortunately I'm situated in one of those gaps. As a First Nations person, to call myself Australian feels like I'm removing a part of myself that's been here for tens of thousands of years. And I think time and time again it's been shown with what's happening in the media that to be Australian is to be complicit. To be Australian is to be complacent. It is, we are so lucky and we use that luck to weaponize incompetence, laziness, whatever you want to call it. I think that for me to feel good about being Australian, that definition has to change. Do you feel accepted in your country? Unfortunately, I feel maybe not accepted, but tolerated. I think there is this kind of, there's a cultural ethos that I think a lot of Australians have where in order to check in your privilege as an Australian, to be a member of this lucky country, you have to, I guess, you have to avoid tough conversations and you have to, I just think about, you know, my family and the generations that we've gone through have allowed me to be in a place where I can even be an artist. A generation or two that would have been unheard of. We come from a low socioeconomic background, and so the pursuit of arts is kind of, my parents told me not to be an artist, so I ran away to Brisbane to be an artist. But part of that reminds me of, you know, growing up and seeing, you know, your grandparents watch the cricket, and it seems really romantic, but there is an element of comfort where we get so used to that, we get so used to not having movement that we choose not to move. And I feel like because of the fact that we have so much, we also have so much to fight for. So no, I don't quite feel accepted, I feel tolerated, but I'm willing to negotiate. Are you proud of your country? This is perhaps, for me, is a bit of a loaded question because I do. I feel like there is a lot to be proud of in being Australian. I'm proud of the fact that we have a really strong presence of diversity. We have culture that is led by immigrant culture. We have culture that has been endemic to this country. And our culture is not a monolith. I think we all reject the idea that there is one Australian being. And for me, that sense of pride, I think for me to be proud of being Australian and proud of this country, that a lot needs to change. I think I'm proud that we can be in this room and talk about these things. Maybe not in a lot of rooms, but there is this element where we do value arts and culture and we value intelligent conversation, and that is something to be grateful for every day. And lastly, what are your hopes for the future of your country? I just hope that everyone has a bit more humility, to be honest, in future. I think that we have a various group of demographics in this country, but I feel like we do have a supremacy problem. I feel like sometimes one group feels like they know more than the other, or that they're more entitled to things, and I feel like that is completely opposite to what the values that we should be fighting for. This is the sort of broad outline of the project. I thought I'd hit you with a little bit of colour in case the early morning dopamine is not quite hitting. But so we're starting with the initial survey. So this is going out to the national public to try and gauge interests. We're going to collate the data and identify with what resonates. So going to be very ethical about how we do it. So it's all manual labour, no AI, a lot of Excel, Control F. Yes, okay, someone spelled it slightly differently, let's go again, search, to try and figure out a data set that accurately represents how people feel. I'm really excited to try and push this as far as possible as well, outside of the more liberal trending arts demographics as well. I think it would be a real win if we got a few racists to engage with it. I think that might actually, maybe that's the edge that the project needs. And from that, we're going to begin designing options for mascots based off of these trends, which then leads on to similar to today, but more explicitly focused on feedback, holding online and in-person hybrid work groups where people can give live feedback, and we want to engage with people who explicitly participate in the project as well. So if you consent to be contacted, you might be randomly pulled to then participate, and those participants will be paid as well. And then from there, we will finalize the design and make it real. So yes, it will exist. There will be some kind of suit. It will be of our world and dimension, maybe for better or worse. And then from there, it's really all hell breaks loose. I conceive this as not just a conceptual gesture, but for the arts to also have a canon mascot figure of its own, and it will be used in future artworks, engagements, performances perhaps, and kind of just be a recurring character that you hopefully don't get sick of. So to end off, I might just open up to any questions or comments. As part of the survey as well, later there will be an updated field to just have some feedback as well, so don't feel pressure if you don't want to now. I think it's just a good opportunity if there are any itching questions.
I'll get you to use the lectern and we'll use the mic, just because we are recording everything for accessibility for later. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your talk. Just off the back of Ruby's presentation as well, my first thing I wondered is if you've thought about just using AI to come up, just to see what it would come up with as a mascot based on what it knows Australia to be, and I wonder if it gives us a pretty grotesque version that we're very unhappy with and it actually alarms us a little bit. I don't know, thank you.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that there's been that temptation to engage with that technology, and I think for me it's part of it is maintaining the spiritual element of the work. So I want to sit through, and I'll definitely be bringing on some volunteers to sift through the data and inform the design. So because an important part of it is to be able to essentially witness these testimonies of how people feel, because the mascot itself will sort of operate as a kind of hive mind. It will have the memories and the experiences of these people embedded into it. So part of that fabric is also making sure that when we're making these artistic gestures that we are also hiring artists as well. So I have thought of that, and I think that what is interesting about this is I don't want something that is appeasable. I don't want something that is clean. I kind of want a Frankenstein ugly duckling situation, because I feel like to avoid that or to have anything that isn't is to betray this project. I think that it is about the complexity and the mess. So, yeah, if someone wants it to be a giant pink cube, then that's what we get. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'm curious around just with the process, the balancing of the kind of quantity versus quality, kind of, or the. I mean, I just did the survey now, and they're really thoughtful questions. I could imagine, yeah, you could get a really wide range of depth versus breadth kind of thing. So just curious about that.
Yeah. So basically, we tried to design it in a way that there are some open-ended questions and then some that are sort of just like nodules. So we'll be able to go through the data and just see like what are the maybe 10 most popular answers for a particular question, and then use that to directly inform. But I also think part of it is there is an element of discretion in going through, because I think outliers are going to be just as important as the trends. So if there is a response that is really emotionally resonant that I feel like people really need to hear, then that will inform the project. So there is, a bit of editing, obviously. There's going to be a lot of fat to trim, but I'm just really excited to see how everybody feels, and hopefully with some equal measure, come in with a little bit of navigation to find something that resonates.
We might save the rest of the questions for the discussion later, if that's all right, Keemon.
Yeah. Thank you.